When my wife stepped out for a minute, an old neighbor showed up with money, a key, and a secret that changed everything. If you've ever trusted family blindly like I did, stay with me. This isn't just drama. It's the life lesson I wish someone had warned me about sooner. Before we move on, I just want to say thank you. Take a moment to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you are right now. I will never forget that night, a night I thought was the beginning of my final peaceful years. After 30 years of working with oil-stained hands, I sold the old house I'd lived in for half my life, saved every penny, then joined my brother Derek and my nephew Jace to buy a duplex. So our family can be closer, they said. It sounded heartwarming, didn't it? My wife Evelyn smiled all week. She said there was nothing more precious than growing old surrounded by loved ones. I believed her, truly, deeply. The new duplex was sprawling, 2 connected units, a lawn stretching from one front door to the other, a porch wide enough for 3 or 4 people to share a beer without tripping over each other. I stood on the doorstep, looking into the living room. The warm yellow light seemed to coat everything in a layer of peace I'd longed for. Derek stood in the middle of the room, beer in hand, talking nonstop about a new investment plan he promised would help the family turn things around again. Jace laughed loudly at his dad's jokes, while Evelyn bustled between the kitchen and the dining table, her hands busy, her eyes sparkling with joy. And me, I just sat there, clutching a cold beer can, watching those familiar faces and thinking, finally, I have a place to grow old in peace. I didn't fully understand all the paperwork when we bought the place. I wasn't good at reading contracts, didn't know all those convoluted legal terms Derek loved to use. But blood, you see, wouldn't betray you, I thought, and that was my biggest mistake. The smell of grilled meat filled the room. The TV music, the clinking of glasses. Everything felt like a perfect little family party. I even felt a little proud, like, yeah, 60 years old, and I can still provide a new home for the whole family. Until Evelyn got a call. She said it was her sister, then wiped her hands and stepped out onto the porch for some quiet. The door closed softly. I sat down at the table, listening to the wind rustling on the porch, feeling nothing out of the ordinary. Then I heard Derek lower his voice. Tomorrow, the bank, we need to finalize it. Jace replied, I've got the papers ready. He just needs to sign. When I turned to look, Derek's expression had changed. He flashed a forced smile. Oh, don't mind us, big brother. Just some paperwork. We've got it handled. I didn't ask anything more. Just a faint flicker of suspicion, like something had slipped through my fingers, but I couldn't quite grasp what it was. A sudden knock, urgent, insistent. I stood up before Derek could react, pulled the door open, and my heart almost stopped. Marjorie Lane, my elderly neighbor from right next to my old house, hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, panting as if she'd run a long way. Her hands trembled, but what sent a chill down my spine were the 2 things she held. A bag of cash. And the keys to my old house. Before I could even speak, she thrust the bag of money into my hands. Her voice shook, choked with fear, as if terrified of her own words. Take this, if you still want a way out. I froze. What are you saying? Marjorie shook her head, her eyes glistening, on the verge of tears. I heard everything they discussed through that old wall. Don't trust your family. Tomorrow, you'll be kicked out of this very house. A cold wind swept straight into my chest. The bluish-white porch light behind her made everything outside darker, colder, silent. So silent, even my own pounding heart echoed in my ears. From inside, I heard Derek call out loudly, Arthur, who is it? Marjorie flinched. Her hand tightened on mine, a desperate plea. Don't say I'm here, please. I could only swallow hard, my heart hammering against my ribs. I turned, quickly stuffing the money bag and keys into my jacket pocket, hanging on the hook. When I turned back, she had already stepped back onto the path, her eyes fixed on the inside door, as if afraid of being pulled back in. I closed the door softly. In that instant, the atmosphere inside the house shifted, no longer warm, no longer peaceful. I looked straight at Jace, and for the first time that evening, his eyes were as cold as stone. Derek asked, his voice half joking, half insistent. Who was that? Someone you know, big brother? I forced down the prickle running down my spine. No, they must have pressed the wrong doorbell. I sat down, my hand instinctively touching my jacket pocket. I felt it clearly. The metallic edge of the old key. The heavy wad of cash, a warning I hadn't fully grasped yet. Derek raised his glass again, talking about tomorrow's contract being just a few simple papers. Jace occasionally glanced at me, his gaze assessing, chilling. The whole room was still lit with warm yellow light, still had music, still smelled of barbecue, but I felt like I was sitting between two worlds, one outwardly filled with family, and one underneath, cracking apart, bit by bit. I sat there until I couldn't bear it anymore. I stood up, forcing a smile. I'll just step out on the porch for some air. No one stopped me. No one questioned me. They simply resumed their interrupted conversation, completely oblivious to the fact that I was trembling, as if someone had just squeezed my heart. I opened the door and stepped out. The porch was empty. No Marjorie. No one. No footsteps. Just a small shoe print still etched on the concrete and a faint tire track leading to the dark road ahead. She was gone. So fast, I couldn't believe it. I reached into my jacket pocket, touched the cold iron key again, touched the soft but heavy stack of money. And right then, I knew. This evening wasn't the perfect night I thought it was. It was the opening warning for something far darker. I turned back towards the house, looking through the glass. Derek was saying something to Jace. Jace nodded. Evelyn still hadn't returned from her call. The room looked peaceful, but peaceful in a way that scared me. I took a long breath. Then I said this, truly, to anyone listening now. That night was the first time I had a premonition that I was just a temporary guest in the very dream I had spent my entire life building. And I didn't know then that everything was about to collapse. But I knew one thing for sure. They were hiding something from me. Something just beyond that wall, waiting to devour my entire life. I just didn't know what it was. But I would find out. Very soon. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd just stumbled out of a nightmare. Except everything was still there, stark before my eyes. The duplex stood silent. Sunlight still streamed through the curtains, but in the jacket pocket hanging by the door were the old keys to the house of my life and a heavy bag of money my hands dared not touch. Evelyn was still fast asleep, her breathing even, her face relaxed after a day of joy. I lay there, staring at the ceiling for a long time, my heart aching with every beat. Marjorie's words echoed in my head like a curse. Tomorrow, you'll be kicked out of this very house. Tomorrow is today. I got up as quietly as I could, afraid to wake my wife, barefoot on the cold floor. Each step down the hallway felt like a part of my life being stretched taut between two poles. On one side, my family can't be like that. And on the other, what if she was right? I took the jacket off the hook. My fingers fumbled into the pocket. Cold metal against my skin. The small jingle of the old keys sounded like chains. And next to it, the edge of the plastic bag holding the wad of cash Marjorie had pressed into my hand last night. I spread the money bag on the kitchen table. The morning light caught each bill. The numbers, the ink of signatures. I recognized it instantly. This wasn't a little money she contributed to me or some random fund. It was the entire deposit from the sale of my old house. I remembered that day clearly. Marjorie and I stood waiting at the real estate office. I handed over the money, signed the papers. She was the only one I asked to come along so I wouldn't feel lonely. She carefully kept a copy of the receipt saying, "Just in case you lose it, I'll remember for you." Back then, I just laughed, thinking how thoughtful this old woman was. Now, that thoughtfulness lay sprawled on my kitchen table like a slap to the face. I flipped through each bill, counted it again, not a single dollar missing. I looked around the house. New kitchen, new chairs, those paintings Jace said he bought online. Everything was new, except how I felt. It wasn't new at all. It was exactly the same feeling I had when a garage owner cheated me out of my wages years ago. Only this time, the people who might have done this to me were sleeping in the next room, drinking beer with me last night, calling me big brother, dad. I stuffed the money back into my pocket, my mind racing. I needed to know what exactly they had done with the papers. I didn't tell Evelyn. I just left her a small note on the table. Out for a bit, sleep in. My handwriting trembled, distorted, like someone far older than my actual age. I put the money bag and keys into my jacket, stepped out onto the street. The air was chilly. The road in front of the house was quiet. But my mind wasn't still for a second. I didn't go to my old house. I knew if I went there now, I'd just stand amidst empty walls and wonder how stupid I'd been. Instead, I turned in another direction. The bank. The place Derek kept saying, "Don't worry, I'll handle them. You're old. No need to read all that tiring stuff." I walked into the lobby, still clutching my jacket pocket as if someone might snatch it away. The air conditioning blew cold. Someone's perfume wafted past. Young people came and went, in shirts, with laptops, phones. I felt completely out of place. "Excuse me, miss?" I called to an employee walking by. "I need to ask about the house contract, the duplex, under Derek's name and Jace's, that I contributed money for." The girl smiled, the professional smile reserved for older customers. "Yes, sir. May I have your full name and any related documents?" I showed my ID, gave Derek's name, the duplex address. She typed a few things on her computer, her eyes scanning the screen. Her face didn't change, but the first sentence she uttered made my legs feel like jelly. "Sir, according to our system, that house is registered under Derek and Jace's names. They are the owners, co-borrowers. I don't see your name on the contract." I thought I'd misheard. "No name of mine, not a single word?" "No, legally, the owners are Derek and Jace." She pulled the screen closer, pointing to lines of text that I couldn't read fast enough. "As for the money that you said you transferred, let me check that for you." She typed again, a few more lines. Her brows furrowed slightly. "Sir, that amount is recorded as a gift contribution, a gift from you to Derek, with your electronic signature confirmation." I burst out laughing, a dry, hollow laugh that sounded alien even to myself. "A gift? That's my life savings. What kind of gift is that?" The girl looked at me, her eyes beginning to acquire an invisible pane of glass, the kind of glass people use when talking to someone, a little out of control. She spoke slower, gentler. "Sir, that's all the system shows. If you wish to file a complaint, you can schedule an appointment with our legal department, or you can have Derek accompany you for convenience. We only follow the signed and confirmed contracts." I wanted to snatch the screen from her hands, to flip everything over, point to each line and scream, "I'm the one who provided the money. I'm the one who sold the house. How did it become a gift?" But I didn't. I just stood there, my hands shaking, my lips dry. The hum of the air conditioner on the ceiling echoed in my head. In that moment, I understood what people meant by being tied up by paperwork. No one needed to grab me by the collar. Just a few words in a system. And I had nothing left. I walked out of the bank like a man drained of blood. Outside, the sun was higher. People still laughed, still tapped on their phones, still drove past me. Only inside my chest was a vast emptiness. If the house wasn't in my name, if my money was recorded as a gift, then where did I stand in this duplex dream for the whole family? I went home, said nothing on the way, reached the door. I heard Derek's voice from the living room, light as if nothing in the world had happened. "Arthur, where are you off to so early?" I didn't answer immediately. I hung up my jacket, walked in, looked straight at him. "I just came from the bank." The smile on Derek's face faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. He leaned back, still holding his coffee cup. "Oh, really? What was so urgent you had to go yourself? I keep telling you, let us handle these things." "My name," I said slowly, "isn't on any of the papers. Not on the deed. Not on the loan agreement. Not on any damn thing." Derek exhaled, the kind of breath someone takes when trying to suppress a laugh at someone's naivety. "Big brother, I've explained this already. Your credit history isn't great. You know that. You haven't had a stable income for years. If your name was on it, the bank wouldn't approve. Jason and I had to be on it to get a good interest rate. I haven't done anything wrong to you. What about my money? Why is it listed as a gift? My voice rose, a pitch I didn't even recognize. Oh, for heaven's sake, Derek waved his hand, a dismissive smile. That's just how it's recorded, just paperwork. The important thing is you have a place to live, right? You always worry about numbers, about lines of text. Can't you just live a little lighter? Evelyn came out of the kitchen, towel still in hand. She glanced at me, then at Derek, looking worried. What's going on? You two arguing first thing in the morning? Derek turned to his sister-in-law, his voice instantly softening. Nothing, dear. I'm just explaining things to Arthur. He worries too much. Jace and I are just on the papers for convenience, that's all. Arthur is old. He doesn't want the bank giving him a hard time. Jace came downstairs, laptop in hand, hair still messy. He overheard and cut in, with the voice of a confident young man who thought he understood the law better than an old man. Actually, technically, listing the money as a gift contribution helps us take advantage of certain tax benefits and interest rates, Arthur. I've calculated everything. That's how the American system works. You have to play by the rules. Just trust us. Trust us. Those two words fell into my ears like a rusty anchor. Years ago, I'd said the same thing to my own father. Dad, trust me. But back then, I never once thought of stealing his house. I looked at Evelyn. She stood between the two sides, her gaze wavering. She loved Derek. He always brought gifts, always called, always said pleasant things. And me, often, I just buried my head in a broken car engine. Don't make a big deal out of it, Evelyn whispered, placing her hand on mine. Derek is looking out for us. I see how hard he works, running back and forth. We live together. Let's just trust each other a little. Trust, I repeated. Do you even know that on paper I'm nothing in this house? Evelyn was silent. She didn't know how to answer. And in that moment, when my wife couldn't fully stand by my side, I felt alone in the middle of my own living room. From then on, everything slid downhill very quickly. Not with shouts, but with whispers, with stories retold, with glances. I started noticing, every time relatives or neighbors came over, Derek was always the first to speak. Arthur's been a bit forgetful lately, he'd chuckle, his voice sounding like he was telling a harmless, funny story. Good thing he sold his old house. He was in so much debt, I had to step in and clear everything up for him. Everyone would gasp, pitying me yet finding it entertaining. Someone would pat my shoulder. You really have a good brother. Hard to find someone who will take on your debts these days. My heart burned as I listened. I didn't ask him to take on my debts. That was money from my house sale. I contributed it to buy this new house. But before I could finish, Derek cut me off, his voice sweet as honey. He always says that. He kept quiet when signing the papers. Now he's a bit forgetful, thinking people are tricking him. Oh well, he's old. Let's not hold it against him. Laughter erupted again, this time with a few wary glances directed at me, as if I were a stubborn child acting up in front of adults. In just a few weeks, I realized my image in their eyes had completely changed. From a man who had worked his entire life to provide for his family, to an irresponsible old man, bad with money, lucky to have an outstanding younger brother. Even Evelyn seemed to subtly adjust. One evening, she asked me to use the back entrance when returning home, just so the neighbors don't get the wrong idea about all the visitors. I swallowed the bitter taste. The family, my family, was slowly isolating me. This was the true nature of their betrayal. Evenings, I sat alone on the porch, watching the lights in the neighborhood. I heard Derek talking on the phone in his study. I heard Jace laughing with someone about new deals. I heard Evelyn sigh when someone asked, "You live at your brother's house now. How nice is that?" The house I thought was mine had somehow become someone else's charity. The climax was that weekend's family party. More people gathered than usual. The dining table was laden with food. Wine flowed freely. I thought it was for some celebration. Turns out, it was for Derek to announce his new room arrangement plan. He raised his glass, smiling brightly in front of everyone. Jace and I have discussed it. Upstairs, we'll convert it into a workspace in Jace's bedroom because he's young, still needs his own space. Arthur and Evelyn, you two can stay downstairs for convenience, less stairs to climb, just temporarily, until everything settles. A distant aunt laughed loudly. So Arthur gets to live in a beautiful house for free. He should be grateful to his brother. Others nodded, agreeing. That's right, it's lucky to have a place to live. These days, houses aren't easy to come by. No one asked where the money for this house came from. No one remembered what I had sold to be sitting here, listening to these grateful remarks. I looked up at the ceiling, then around. Only the silent walls still knew who I was. Evelyn sat next to me, her face flushed with shame. I saw her hands clutching her napkin. After the party, when everyone had left, Evelyn finally spoke. Did you hear what they said? In their eyes, we're like living off charity. I feel so humiliated, Arthur. I don't want people to think we're freeloading off your brother. I looked at my wife, my heart heavy. Do you think I want this? Do you think I want people to call me a freeloader in the very house I helped pay for? Evelyn didn't answer. She turned away, wiping a glass that was already clean for the third time. I understood. It wasn't that she didn't believe me. It was that she was afraid of the truth if she had to face it. A few days later, I couldn't bear it anymore. I took out the old key, the iron key, scratched, slightly rusty, but still familiar in shape. I put it in my pocket, telling Evelyn I was going for a walk. She asked where. I just said, I'll stop by the old place, see how it is. My old house stood silently on the old street. The front no longer had a for sale sign. The door was still closed. I inserted the key. The lock turned with a soft click. The door creaked open. The air inside smelled of dust, old wood, and years gone by. The traces of previous life had been erased, leaving only white walls, empty floors, a few streaks of light through the windows, and a figure sitting on a folding chair in the empty living room. Marjorie. She turned to look at me, her eyes tired but alert. I knew you'd come today. I closed the door. The sound of the lock clicking shut was heavy. You have to tell me everything, now. Marjorie sighed, her thin hands clasped together. I didn't want to believe it. But the wall was thin, Arthur. When you still lived here, I often heard those two, the uncle and nephew, discussing things. Back then, I just thought, it must be business. Until you sold the house, and I saw you sign papers without reading much. I started to worry. She told her story, fragment by fragment, sentence by sentence. The night before I signed the house sale contract, Derek and Jace sat right on the other side of the wall, discussing collecting Arthur's money, using their names to borrow for the duplex, then re-signing the house in their names. If I made a fuss, they'd have Plan B, putting me in a more dignified care facility, some nursing home with a special contract. Derek even joked, once he's there, it'll be easier for us to manage the assets. Marjorie's voice choked up as she spoke. I sat there listening, my hands and feet freezing. You were at my place drinking tea, telling me how much you trusted your brother. I didn't know what to say. If I'd spoken sooner, you probably wouldn't have signed so many papers. I closed my eyes, my head throbbing. It turned out, while I was raising a glass to my new home dream, they had already figured out where to dump me if I spoke up. Why did you keep my deposit money? I asked, my voice hoarse. Because I was afraid. She looked straight into my eyes. I was afraid that one day you'd be thrown out of everywhere, even a nursing home, if you didn't have a dime left in your name. I'm old. I can't speak as forcefully as those young ones, but at least I could save you this last lifeline. I looked at the bag of money on the table, and suddenly my eyes stung. That lifeline was the clearest proof of who I had given my life to. Marjorie continued, slow and steady. Arthur, you have to understand. On paper, everything they did looks perfectly clean. You signed to sell the house. You signed to confirm it was a gift. You're not on the duplex deed. If you sue, they have lawyers. They have a very nice story about the brother who saved his elder brother. And you only have your word. I gave a bitter laugh. So that's it. I lost the moment I signed. Not necessarily. Marjorie shook her head. Paperwork can be legal and still dirty. The problem is, you have to prove that dirtiness. I sat down on the chair opposite her, feeling as if all the bones in my body were hollow. I'm just a mechanic. I don't know how to find justice. You don't need to be a lawyer, Marjorie said, her eyes lighting up a little. You need proof they've repeated this pattern with other people. Real evidence. Papers, recordings, photos. Something from inside the house you're living in. From Derek's own study. I I remembered that room. The door was always closed. Inside, it was full of files, printers, scanners. Derek said, "This is a workspace. No one touch anything." I had never been in there for more than a few seconds. Derek often met with brokers, Marjorie said. "I saw him running back and forth with other old people in the neighborhood. I don't think you're the only one, Arthur. He's learned a very dangerous game, and he sees you as his easiest practice run." Those words fell on me like stones. "So, what do I do?" I asked, my voice sounding alien even to myself. "First," she said, "don't run away. Don't take this money and disappear to get out of their sight. Don't let them turn you into a story of the unstable elder brother who ran away with an old neighbor woman. You have to stay, right in that house. Observe, listen, wait for the moment. And when the opportunity arises, you and I will go into his study." It sounded like a crazy plan. Two old people breaking into the study of a man who knew the law better than they did. But strangely, for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something other than despair in my chest. A spark of indignation. And a touch of stubbornness. I thought, I said slowly, at 60, the only thing I needed to learn was how to rest. Turns out, I have to learn how to fight with paperwork. Marjorie smiled faintly, a sad but firm smile. "You won't fight alone. I'm here. I listened. I saw. And if needed, I'm ready to stand up in front of everyone, too." I looked at her. An old neighbor, no blood relation, no financial connection, yet the only one who dared to call what was happening to me by its true name. And my brother was the one preparing to send me to better care. On the way back to the duplex, I walked slower. Each step was a question. If I stayed silent, what would I have? A downstairs room, an old chair, a few family meals, at the cost of my dignity and accepting being treated like a confused child. If I spoke up, I could lose everything. But at least I would retain the feeling of being a human being who knew what was being done to him. I opened the duplex door. The TV was still on. Derek was watching the news, Jace was on his phone, Evelyn was washing dishes. A normal family scene, so normal that if an outsider looked in, they would never believe what Marjorie had just told me. Derek turned around, his voice gentle. "Where have you been? Seems like a busy day, huh?" I looked at him, at Jace, at the whole house. And this time, instead of feeling like a temporary guest, I reminded myself, "You are the one who paid for this roof. You have a right to be here. You have a right to know what's going on behind these walls." I revisited the old place, I said, and I've decided. "Decided what?" Derek asked, a slight smirk. "I'm staying," I replied, "to the very end." He chuckled, thinking it was the words of an old man clinging on. "Well, that's good. Family, you know, good to be close." He didn't know. Staying to the very end, for me now, no longer meant sitting and listening to him arrange my life. It meant I would wait, I would watch, I would listen. And then, one night, Marjorie and I would walk into the study he still thought only he and his dirty files entered. I was no longer the one being helped. In their eyes, perhaps I had become a burden, a nuisance, a confusing old man. But in my heart, for the first time in months, I saw one thing clearly. I would not drown in silence. And if my entire life could achieve just one more thing, it would be to drag Derek and Jace's truth into the light. I still remember that afternoon very clearly, right before everything blew up. Derek stood in the middle of the duplex living room, white shirt sleeves rolled up, speaking as if he carried the entire financial sky of the family on his shoulders. "Listen, Arthur, tomorrow morning, Jace and I have to go to the bank, then meet with the broker. Once we sign those annexes, our house will take off. You just stay home and relax. Don't worry about a thing." Evelyn stood beside him, her eyes brightening at the words, "take off." "Yes, you stay home," she said, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder, her voice gentle, but oddly distant. "Derek and I are going to the furniture showroom to look at new models for upstairs. It's been a while since we bought anything decent for ourselves." It sounded like a perfect plan, an old man like me, at home, drinking tea, watching TV. The young ones going out to take care of the future, handle paperwork. Who could object? Except, After everything I'd learned from Marjorie, every word like help you, take care of you, sign for you, sounded like a knife blade against bone. That evening, when Evelyn went into the bedroom to fold clothes for her trip with Derek the next day, I stood at the door, watching her bend down, meticulously folding each of my old sweaters. "Evelyn," I called, my voice hoarse. "Tomorrow, if there are any papers, please read them carefully. Don't sign anything you don't understand." Evelyn looked up, frowning slightly. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Arthur," she sighed. "Again? Derek knows everything. He's not stupid enough to do anything wrong. You're just too stressed." I swallowed a lump in my throat. "I'm not saying he's stupid," I said slowly. I just feel worried. You agree to everything they say, but me..." She looked at me longer, her eyes flashing with a flicker of weariness that I dared not examine too closely. "All right," she said softly. "Don't make everything so heavy. Just stay home tomorrow. Don't overthink it." The bedroom door closed gently. I stood alone in the hallway, looking down at my jacket pocket hanging by the door, where a few crumpled photocopies Marjorie had given me were hidden. No, I couldn't just stay home anymore. The next morning, Derek and Jace left, smelling of expensive cologne, their shoes polished, talking about interest rates, equity, refinancing as they walked. Evelyn wore her best jacket, her hair neatly styled. Before she left, she turned back to instruct me. "Don't open the door for any strangers, okay? Call me if anything happens." I nodded. "Yes, you go on." The door closed. The entire duplex fell into a silence where I could hear every tick-tock of the wall clock. I went straight to the landline phone, picked it up, dialed the number. "Hello?" Marjorie's voice was hoarse but alert. "It's me," I said. "They're gone. Can you come over?" There was a pause on the other end. Then she replied with surprising calm. "I'm standing at the end of the alley. Open the back door for me." I was startled. You think you're the only one who didn't sleep last night?" She chuckled softly, a thin sound. "Open the door, Arthur. It's today or never." I hung up, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My feet moved automatically towards the back door, my hands fumbling with the lock. She was really there. Gray coat, old shawl, carrying a canvas bag. Her eyes looked straight at me, no longer with the panicked trembling from the night she brought the money. Today, in the depths of her eyes, there was something else. Determination. "Are you ready?" she asked. "I don't know," I exhaled. "But if I don't do this, I don't think I can look myself in the mirror again." "That's enough," she nodded. "Close the door, lower the blinds. We have about an hour, if we're lucky." We entered the house like two thieves, in my own home. I pulled down the living room window blinds. The soft yellow light was cut, leaving a half-dark, half-bright atmosphere, hazy as if in someone else's house. I suddenly thought, how long has it been since this felt like my home? "Where's his study?" she whispered. "Upstairs, end of the hallway on the right," I replied. "Derek never lets anyone in there, says it's his private office." "Well, then that private office is getting a thorough cleaning today," she muttered. We climbed the stairs, step by step, trying not to make the wood creak. Every small squeak made my heart jump. My ears strained, trying to catch any sound of a car in the driveway, keys at the front door. Nothing, just the distant rumble of a garbage truck passing through the neighborhood. In front of Derek's door, I stopped. A dark wooden door, shiny knob, a small scratch underneath. I'd never noticed it before. Suddenly, I remembered. Once I wanted to go in there to see a bill, and Derek had almost snatched the key from my hand. Back then, I thought he just liked his privacy. Now, "Do you have the key?" she asked. I pulled out the tarnished brass key from my pocket. I had secretly taken it from the communal keyring on the wall a few days earlier. Inserted it into the lock, turned it. A soft click echoed, so clear I thought the whole neighborhood must have heard it. We stepped inside. Derek's study was much colder than the rest of the house, not because of the air conditioning, but because of the colors, gray walls, black desk, neat bookshelves, everything as clean as a showroom. On the desk was a computer, a desk lamp, a few pens lined up perfectly, almost no trace of life, only papers. Places like this are always the same with people like him, Marjorie said softly. Important documents are never left out in the open. They're always hidden in things others are afraid to touch. Like file cabinets. She pointed to the corner of the room. Like a safe. Like those folders he labels with other people's names. I followed her gaze. In the corner was a tall file cabinet, gray metal door, combination lock. Next to it was a lower wooden cabinet, sliding drawers labeled clients, loans, family, Missy. I swallowed hard. You know this place well. She looked at me. You think I've never seen a room like this before? My daughter, before she died, was also dragged into their private office by a mother and son pair. Her voice caught, 1 second, 2 seconds, then she took a deep breath as if swallowing the memory itself. Today isn't about that, she continued. Today is about you. Let's start. We split up. I stood before the wooden cabinet, pulling out each drawer. The smell of paper, ink, the musty scent of old files wafted up. I rummaged through each folder, my eyes scanning dozens of names, numbers, signatures, red stamps. What are you looking for first? She asked. Anything with my name, I replied, or the old house's name. My hand trembled slightly as I touched a folder labeled Arthur Vance Property. My heart suddenly constricted. I pulled it out, placed it on the desk, opened it page by page. Old house sale deed, money transfer confirmation, every number, every signature, all mine. But in the upper corner, unlike what I expected, the bold lettering wasn't deposit or equity, but gift contribution. A gift. I heard my heart pounding in my ears, like someone knocking from inside my chest. They used the word gift? Marjorie's voice cut through my thoughts. All of it, I stammered. All of it says gift. My house sale money is a gift to Derek. Just as I told you, she nodded, but her eyes were still full of anger. This is just the upper layer. There's a lower layer. Lower layer? She went to the large metal cabinet, adjusting her glasses on her nose. The most important things aren't in folders with your name, she whispered. They're in the master ledger, where he lists everyone like you. She pressed buttons, turned numbers. I watched her wrinkled fingers dance across the lock face, as if playing a piano. How do you know? You forgot our old house walls were so thin, she smirked. 2 years of listening to his phone calls, I memorized the 3 numbers he often used. Old people don't just nap, Arthur. A heavy clunk echoed. The cabinet door swung open. Inside there was no gold or silver, only files. So many files. Folders neatly arranged in rows, numbered, labeled, Case 01, completed. Case 02, nursing home. Case 03, on hold. And in the middle, a thick, gray-covered notebook, its corners frayed. My heart constricted again. There, she said softly, his black book. I reached out, touched the notebook cover. My fingertips brushed against the cold, rough surface. It was heavier than I expected. When I opened it, the faint smell of old ink and cigarette smoke hit my face. The first page was a list of names. Column A, full name. Column B, address. Column C, amount. Column D, status. In the margin were a few scribbled notes. Talk to son, loves money. Indulges mother, hates nursing homes. Can use old debts to pressure. My eyes scanned down, unfamiliar names, neighborhoods I'd never heard of. Then I saw it. Arthur Vance. Derek's handwriting, exactly like on the notes he used to stick on the fridge about don't forget to turn off the stove when frying meat. Next to my name was the line, in progress, currently being executed. I stood there, frozen. The room suddenly spun slightly around me. All external sounds, cars, wind, the chirp of a sparrow somewhere seemed to be sucked from my ears. The entire world contracted to those 2 words, in progress. In his eyes, I wasn't his brother. Not the man who carried him when he fell off his bike at 10. Not the one who took him to his first job interview. I was a transaction in progress. See? Marjorie's voice was soft, but not trembling. He doesn't just do this to you. Look at the names above. I flipped through the previous pages. Case 04, Mrs. Holloway, nursing home, property sold. Case 05, Mr. Jenkins, deceased, son signed over deed. Each line was a piece of a life. Each note was a blade. I told you, she continued. My daughter ended up in a place like that. Only difference is, that ledger was held by someone else. The mechanism is identical. Find old people, weave a story of help, gather papers, then she left it hanging. I didn't ask what then was. I looked down at my name again. It felt like looking at a death warrant written in neat script. I have to take pictures, I said, my voice choked. Yes, she nodded. We can't carry the whole cabinet, but we can carry its image. She took an old phone from her bag, small screen, worn casing. Not the shiny smartphone of the young ones, but the camera still worked. Keep your hands steady, she said. I'll turn each page. You take one picture per page. Don't shake. I held the phone, my fingers sweaty. The desk lamp above cast a yellow halo on the paper. Each time I pressed the button, a small click sounded. So clear, I feared it would echo all the way downstairs. We worked like two people dissecting the carcass of an animal revered by the whole neighborhood. Name pages, address pages, note pages, my own file. The files of other old people in the neighborhood, some of whom I remembered. Old men and women who used to sit and drink tea with me on my old porch, who used to boast to me that my grandson is so good, he's helping me with my paperwork. Click, click, click. I felt as if each press was a bullet fired into the mask of decency Derek had built. When is it enough? I whispered. When you feel you can stand before everyone without trembling anymore, she replied. I paused at the page with my name again, took another shot, then another, just to be sure. All right, she said. Now hide some copies of the documents in your pocket. Just in case he snatches the phone, you'll still have something else. We quickly pulled out a few photocopies from the cabinet, the old house sale contract, the money transfer paper marked gift, a printout from the black book with my name and the in progress line. She folded them small, tucked them into the inside pocket of my jacket, a pocket I'd only ever used to hide loose change my entire life. This pocket, you used to put extra tips from customers in it, didn't you? She asked, her voice suddenly softening. How did you know? The day you fixed my husband's car, she smiled faintly. I saw you, a tiny, normal second, amidst all the abnormality. We had just closed the cabinet door when downstairs, the sound I feared most rang out, the garage door opening. That sound, usually just a signal of family's home, now sounded like an alarm. Marjorie and I looked at each other. No words were needed. We both held our breath. The car engine cut off. The door closed. Footsteps. Jace's voice, annoyed. That's ridiculous. We just got there and the broker calls to reschedule. What a wasted morning. It's fine, Derek's voice replied, unusually calm. It's good, actually. I can come back and check a few more things. Still got time. A few more things. I felt my hands cold. Marjorie placed her hand on my wrist, squeezing gently. Calm down, she whispered. Act like we were never in here. Close the cabinet, adjust the chair, then walk out. Don't run. But it was too late. Derek and Jace's footsteps on the stairs came faster than my thoughts. We hastily pushed the cabinet back against the wall, closed the desk drawers, adjusted the chair to its original position. I hadn't even had time to pull my hand from the metal cabinet lock when the room door burst open. What are you doing in my room? Derek's voice exploded, not a trace of the sweetness or patience he used in front of relatives. I turned around. Derek stood there, face flushed, eyes bulging. Jace was behind him, phone already out, camera open, as if he'd been preparing for this scene for a long time. I stammered. He was just looking for some of his papers, Marjorie said, strangely calm. I told him to open the cabinet to look. It's my fault. What the hell are you doing in our house? Jace almost yelled, raising his phone higher, sweeping it across the room, stopping at my face. Perfect. A paranoid old man and a disturbed neighbor, breaking into a private study. Gold footage right here. Jace, turn it off, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We're family. Family? He scoffed. Family, and you sneak into my uncle's room, rummage through his files? That's what you call family? Derek stepped further in, looking around the room. His eyes scanned the slightly ajar cabinet, the files a little off the dust line. I saw his face change color. You opened the cabinet? He asked, his voice low. I... I took a deep breath. I know everything now, Derek. My house sale money, gift contribution, your cases ledger, my name in progress. You plan to send me to a nursing home and then sell off the rest of the duplex, don't you? For a very brief moment, I saw his eyes waver, just a flicker. Then immediately, it changed to another expression, sad, hurt, exactly the kind of poor brother suspected by his elder brother look. What are you talking about, Arthur? He said, full of drama. You think I want to harm you? You're not well, you know that? You entered my private room without permission, ransacked my work files, and brought this neighbor along. Do you even hear what you're saying? I'm perfectly lucid, I replied. You tricked me into signing the house sale. You listed my money as a gift. Do you have any proof? Jace cut in, holding the phone close to my face. Besides baseless accusations, what do you have? Do you know the law? You're violating privacy, Arthur. Before I could say anything, the front door downstairs opened. Evelyn's voice. Derek? Arthur? I'm home. What was that urgent thing you mentioned earlier? Evelyn, come up here, Derek called. You need to see this. Each of Evelyn's footsteps on the stairs felt like a stomp on my chest. Before I could turn, she stood at the threshold, eyes wide at the scene before her. Me, Marjorie, the slightly open file cabinet, Jace recording. What's going on? She gasped. What are you doing in Derek's room? Listen to your brother-in-law, Derek sighed, stepping closer to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. I don't know what else to say. He turned to me, frowning, as if trying to hold back tears. My brother, he said loudly for everyone in the room to hear, from the day he sold his house, has been living in suspicion. He thinks everyone wants his money. I've tried my best. I gathered the paperwork. I handled the bank. I let him live in peace. And yet, this morning, I came home to find him and a neighbor I've never let into my house, breaking into my study. It wasn't a break-in, I almost screamed. This is my house, my money. I have a right to know what you're doing with it. Did you hear yourself? Jace turned the phone back towards me. Sounds a lot like a paranoid old man, doesn't it? Aunt Evelyn, don't you think Arthur has been a little off lately? Evelyn looked at me, her lips trembling. Arthur, she said, her voice tiny. The other day you also said Derek tricked you. Today, sneaking into his room again, I saw his black book. I turned to her, trying to pull her gaze to mine. Evelyn, there's a book with my name in it, marked in progress. It lists other old people too. He plans to do to me what he did to them. Do you have that book? Derek asked immediately. Do you? Or did you just let this woman fill your head with nonsense? He pointed directly at Marjorie. You've caused my family enough trouble, Ms. Lane, he said, his voice completely devoid of politeness. I tolerated you out of respect for my brother, but today you dragged him into my private room, rummaged through my client files. Do you know you're committing a crime? I did it because I know you're dangerous, she replied, eyes looking straight. I heard all those phone calls, Derek. My old house wall wasn't as thick as you think. You called this person Case 03, that person Case 04. You laughed when talking about dumping them in a nursing home. You thought Arthur didn't hear, but I did. I kept the deposit money for him because I knew this day would come. You're crazy, Jace scoffed. This is exactly why old people need legal guardianship, so they don't get led astray by nosy old women. Turn off that damn phone, Jace, I roared. What are you recording for? To edit, give to a lawyer, say I ruined your house? What have I done wrong besides trying to protect what's mine? Derek stepped closer to me, snatched the old phone from my hand like lightning. If you saw the black book as you say, then it must be in here. He held up the device. We'll see what you've recorded. And if you actually invaded my privacy, I'll have to talk to a lawyer about guardianship for you, to protect both you and us. Give it back! I lunged, but Jace stepped between us, pushing me back. I stumbled, almost falling into the desk. Don't hurt yourself, Arthur, Jace said, his voice feigned concern. At your age, one fall and you could break a hip. I wanted to punch him straight in the face, but I was just a 60-year-old man, panting, hands shaking, eyes blurring. I turned to Evelyn, grasping at a final flicker of hope. Look at me, I said, my voice breaking. Do I look like a madman? Or like an old fool who was made stupid for trusting his family? Have you ever seen me beg anyone for money? I only ask you one thing. Don't let them speak for me anymore. Listen to me just this once." The room fell silent, only my rapid breathing and the faint vibration of the phone in Derek's hand. Evelyn looked at me for a long time. I saw tears in her eyes. But before she could say anything, Marjorie stepped forward. "All right," she said, her voice decisive. "Let me speak for him this time." Everyone turned to look at her. "I'm the one who dragged him into this room," she said clearly. "I'm the one who asked him to open the cabinet. I'm the one who showed him the book. If Derek wants to accuse anyone, accuse me. Arthur, he's just a foolish elder brother who trusted his younger brother for too long. You think if you take all the blame, I'll forgive him?" Derek narrowed his eyes. "I don't need you to forgive anyone," she replied. "I just need at least one old person, not to become the next case in that dirty book." Jace snickered. "You sound like an old woman from a movie," he said. "Do you know what happens if I just press send on this video to a lawyer right now? You entered my uncle's private room, confessed to rummaging through files. Who do you think the police will side with? A homeowner with papers, with assets, or an unemployed neighbor who spends all day peeking through curtains? Go ahead and send it," she shrugged. "I have nothing left to lose. My house, I've sold. My daughter, you know. But Arthur is different. He still has one thing, the true story, and I am a witness." In the middle of their family drama, she subtly glanced at me. Her gaze pulled me back to reality. "You go downstairs," she said, but this time her voice completely changed, louder, as if intentionally for everyone to hear. "I'm tired. I will leave this house. You don't need to be dragged into this anymore. I won't. Go." She turned to look at me, her eyes suddenly red. "You go back to the living room, sit there, let me finish talking to them." In that look, I understood. She was pushing me out of the battlefield to take the bullets herself. "Arthur, go downstairs." Derek seized the opportunity, his voice switching back to gentle. "You're agitated. It's not good for your heart. Tomorrow I'll call the family doctor and we'll talk officially about this, about guardianship, about finances. But for now, please leave my room." He turned to Evelyn. "Can you take him downstairs?" he asked, his voice brotherly and affectionate. "He needs family by his side." Evelyn came to me, placed her hand on my arm. "Let's go downstairs, Arthur," she said softly. "At least to let everyone cool down. I don't want to leave her here alone." I looked at Marjorie. She just shook her head. "Go downstairs, Arthur," she said. "You still have work to do. Not today, but soon. You need a clear head. Leave the dirty part to me." I let Evelyn lead me down the stairs. Each wooden step felt a little higher. Behind me, the argument still echoed. Derek's voice, Jace's voice, Marjorie's voice. I vaguely heard words like police, trespassing, mental, evaluation. The living room greeted me with the smell of new wood and floor cleaner. Everything was clean, shiny, like a display home. I sat down on the sofa, feeling as if I was sitting in someone else's house, not the place I once dreamed would be my final dream. Above, Derek's voice drifted down, lowered, steady, the voice he used to speak to the bank, to lawyers. "Yes, I think you should come as soon as possible," he said on the phone. "My brother, he hasn't been well lately. He's obsessed with money, with being tricked, and now he's dragged the neighbor into it. I fear for his safety, and ours." I closed my eyes. Guardianship. Not well. Obsessed. Each word like a nail hammered around me. My hand unconsciously touched the inside pocket of my jacket. I felt the rough edges of the papers against my fingertips. Small, thin papers, but heavy as lead. The photocopy of the contract marked gift. The printout from the black book, where my name lay among other old people, next to the line in progress. I clutched those things in my hand, feeling like I was holding a life raft while this entire house was the ocean. That night, after Marjorie was seen out by Derek, I only heard the heavy slam of the door and a "never come back." The duplex fell into a thick, suffocating silence. Evelyn walked back and forth in the kitchen, cleaning like a machine. Derek and Jace locked themselves in the upstairs room, occasionally their low voices talking to someone on the phone. "Yes, please prepare the guardianship papers," Derek's voice. "Yes, financial abuse from his end is also a risk. He keeps demanding to withdraw money, to see ledgers, making a mess. I just want to protect him." "Protect!" I sat alone in the living room, the desk lamp casting light on my wrinkled hands, opening and closing over the papers. If I stayed silent tomorrow, the day after, next week, I would become exactly what his story claimed, an unwell old man needing guardianship, needing others to sign everything for him. If I spoke, but only within these four walls, Derek would twist the story, as he had done for years. There was only one path left, to take this story outside. Not to the police station, where Derek's paperwork would overpower my words. Not to the bank alone, where they would look at me through the lens of a panicked old man, but in front of as many people as possible. Family, relatives, neighbors, bank representatives. Anyone who could hear both sides at once, see the papers, hear Marjorie's testimony. I raised my head, looking around the living room. Wall art, Derek chose. Sofa set, Derek paid. TV, Jace installed. Everything in here bore their fingerprints. Only one thing was still mine, my decision. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the chair, my back against the rest, my eyes wide open in the darkness. Occasionally, streetlights outside cast thin streaks of light through the curtain gap onto the floor. The wall clock ticked, slow and haunting. With each passing second, I clutched the papers tighter. Upstairs, in the study, Derek must have locked the cabinet, reviewed Jace's video, talked to his lawyer. He thought he was building another layer of walls to trap me. He didn't know that even as he did that, downstairs, in the dark, an old man was quietly assembling each small piece of evidence into a much larger plan. Bringing all this to light. Taking it out of the closed room Derek still controlled. Bringing it onto a stage he couldn't cut, couldn't edit, couldn't erase. I looked down at my hands one last time, wondering, could an old mechanic, knowing nothing about law or banking, with a few crumpled papers in his pocket, really overturn such an elaborate family scheme? Then I thought of Marjorie's eyes when she looked at me on the stairs. Some people choose to be called a nosy old woman to save someone from being swallowed whole. I couldn't let them down. All right, I whispered to myself in the dark room. If you want a stage, I'll give you a stage. And that's when the image formed in my mind. This living room, a long table, chairs arranged around it, packed with relatives, a few neighbors leaning against the wall, a bank representative awkwardly holding a briefcase, and me, standing in the middle, telling the story from the beginning. No more sneaking around, no more whispering behind thin walls, no more corridor rumors. Only the truth and the names in the black book. That night, amidst the clock ticking like a heartbeat, I decided, tomorrow, I would be the one sending the invitations. Not Derek, not Jace. For the first time, after months of living in this duplex, I felt like I was taking back a little something that belonged to me. Not money, not papers, but my voice. The next morning, Derek made the first move. He walked into the living room, where I was still sitting on the couch, shirt buttoned all the way up, holding a cup of coffee I hadn't touched. His face wore that familiar, burden-bearing younger brother look again, so gentle, so concerned. "Brother," he said, his voice soft, "I've spoken with the lawyer. He's worried about you too. This afternoon, I think we should have a proper meeting." I looked at him. "A meeting about what?" "A family meeting," he replied immediately. "I've invited a few relatives, some close neighbors, and a bank representative. Everyone can sit down together and hear everything about your finances, about your health, to avoid any misunderstandings later." He slowed down on the word health, like driving a nail right into my forehead. "You mean a meeting to discuss guardianship?" I said directly. "Right?" Derek paused for a moment, then sighed, sitting down on the edge of the opposite chair. "You know," he said, his eyes fixed on mine, "I couldn't sleep last night. I thought, maybe you hate me. Maybe you think I'm greedy, but I still want to protect you. If the doctor, the lawyer, think you need someone to sign on your behalf, I'll do it. I won't let outsiders take advantage of you." I almost laughed hearing that. Outsiders. "Suit yourself," I said. "Invite whoever you want. But if there's a meeting, I'll speak too, once and for all." "All right," he nodded immediately. You can say whatever you like. I just have one small request. What request? No matter who speaks, you mustn't lose your temper, shout, or cause a scene. He lowered his voice. The calmer you are, the more stable everyone will perceive you to be. Understood? I watched him for a few more seconds. Perhaps for the first time in my life, I clearly saw the shadow of another man standing behind my brother's face. Not the little boy I used to carry home from the soccer field, bleeding legs but still smiling. This was someone who had calculated every single move. Understood, I said. I'll be calm, provided that everyone gets to hear both sides. Absolutely, Derek smiled, as if I had just said what he wanted most. Just this afternoon. I've already messaged everyone. Actually, he wasn't the first to send messages. As soon as Derek walked out the door, I pulled out my phone. Not the old one that photographed the black ledger yesterday. He'd snatched that. I used my personal phone to call a few old friends, going through my contacts one by one. I called Uncle Paul first, a distant relative, a former lawyer, who the whole family used to tease as the grumpy old man with a beard. Are you free this afternoon? I asked. Derek says there will be a meeting about my finances and my health. Sounds fishy already, he replied, his voice hoarse but sharp. What capacity do you want me to attend in? As a relative, or someone who understands the law? Either capacity is fine, I said, as long as you're willing to hear everything. Of course, he replied. Just tell the truth, Arthur. I'll take care of the rest. I called the couple across the street next, Mr. and Mrs. Harris. They used to share beers with me on the porch, listen to me boast about my duplex dream with family. Could you come over this afternoon for a bit? I asked. Derek wants to present to everyone about my instability. Instability about what? Mr. Harris blurted out. The other day you were gabbing with me for an hour about air compressors. Well, I guess in their eyes, an old man asking to see paperwork is considered unstable. I chuckled weakly. Just come, sit and listen. No need to take sides. All right, Mrs. Harris interjected. I love a good drama, but if I hear someone lying, I won't stay silent, mind you. Finally, I called the most important person. Where are you? I asked. Supermarket, Marjorie's voice echoed with the clatter of a shopping cart in the background. Buying some groceries. Old folks still gotta eat, you know. This afternoon, Derek's holding a family meeting, I said. Bank representative, relatives, neighbors. He wants to deal with me. Can you come? A long silence on the other end. Do you still have copies of the documents in your pocket? She asked. I do, I replied, my hand touching my jacket pocket as if to reassure myself. I had a friend who used to work at a print shop make several more copies. I'm not foolish enough to keep just one set anymore. Good, she said. Then I'll come this afternoon. I won't promise anything except I will only speak what my ears have heard. This time, people might believe you, I said softly. Doesn't matter, she replied. What matters is that younger brother will have to hear his own voice echo back at him. The afternoon sky was gloomy. Clouds hung low over the duplex, as if someone had draped a gray blanket over the entire row of houses. In the living room, Derek had everything arranged. A long table in the center, chairs set in a semicircle, water pitchers, paper cups, a neat stack of papers on the table. The TV was off. The ceiling lights were moderately bright, neither too harsh nor too dim. He wanted this place to look like a meeting room. More people arrived than I expected. The Harrises sat near the window. A few relatives, Aunt Linda, Cousin Mark, the aunt who used to praise Derek for being capable and caring for his brother. Uncle Paul arrived later carrying a briefcase, his beard almost entirely gray, his eyes still sharp. The bank representative was a young man, impeccably tied, with a name badge pinned to his shirt. He sat a little distance from the table, as if not wanting to be drawn too deeply into things. Evelyn sat beside me at the edge of the table, her hands clasped. I could feel her hand tremble slightly now and then, though her face tried to remain calm. Derek and Jace stood at the head of the table like two presenters for a corporate presentation. Thank you all for coming, Derek began, his voice deep, very composed. I know everyone is busy, but I truly had no other choice. I'm worried about my brother. He turned to me, his eyes showing a hint of sadness. Everyone knows Arthur, he continued. He's a straightforward, kind person. But after selling the house and moving into this duplex, he changed. He started doubting everything, thinking everyone wanted his money, even me, even his own wife. Recently, he even dragged the neighbors into it, broke into my office, rummaged through client files. I heard small murmurs from the relatives. The phrase broke in always carried a strong impact. I don't blame him, Derek said, sighing. Age, pressure, signing many documents he doesn't understand. It can make a person confused. But I'd blame myself if I did nothing. If one day he did something harmful to himself or to the family's finances, and I just stood by. I don't want that. He nodded to Jace. Jace plugged his laptop into the TV. The screen displayed scans of contracts, the sale of the old house, money transfers, the duplex loan. Each paper showed my name, my signature, a red stamp. This is the contract for the sale of Uncle Arthur's old house, Jace said, as if presenting in a company meeting. He signed it voluntarily. This is the transfer receipt, where he clearly noted gift contribution to Uncle Derek for him to take out the loan. This is the loan agreement with the bank under Uncle Derek's and my name. Everything is legal, but recently he forgot about it and believes we've seized it. A few people nodded. The bank representative also nodded out of habit. At this age, Aunt Linda whispered to the person next to her, forgetting is normal. Poor him. I sat still, saying nothing. I listened, storing every word in my head, like an old mechanic listening for strange noises in an engine. Derek returned to the table. I invited everyone here today, he concluded, not to shame Arthur. On the contrary, I want, if necessary, we can discuss legal guardianship together to protect him. I invited the bank representative to explain further. As for family, neighbors, I only hope everyone understands. If I have to sign papers on his behalf later, it's because I love him. Hearing this, I felt I couldn't sit still any longer. I'd like to speak, I interrupted, my voice clearer than I expected. If this is a meeting about me, at least let me speak. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. Derek smiled. Of course, he said, like an impartial moderator. Go ahead. I only ask that you remain calm. I stood up. My knees hurt a little, but my back was straight. I won't shout, I said. I don't need to shout anymore, because today I have something I never had before. What? Jace blurted out. I looked straight at him. Paper, I said, and people. I turned to everyone. I'll start from the beginning, I said slowly. If anyone thinks I'm lying, they can stand up, leave, and consider me senile. If anyone finds this story unsettling, then stay until the end. Agreed? No one objected. Uncle Paul nodded slightly, his eyes telling me to continue. My name is Arthur, I said, as if introducing myself to strangers, though everyone here was familiar. 60 years old. My entire life, before coming to this duplex, I lived in a small old house 3 blocks from here. I fixed cars until my back was hunched, my hands calloused. But every weekend, I could still sit on the porch, drink beer, and watch my wife water the plants. My biggest dream was to have a place to grow old close to family. I looked at Derek. When he suggested selling the old house, pooling the money to buy this duplex, I felt like I'd won the lottery, I said. I didn't fully understand the paperwork. I didn't know the difference between a deposit and a gift contribution. But I understood one thing. He's my brother. He used to sleep in the same bed as me when our parents hadn't bought a second one. He used to cry when he was bullied, and I was the one who fought back for him. Someone like that, in my mind, could never deceive his own brother. At least, that's what I believed. I heard someone sigh. I signed, I continued, my voice steady. I signed everything, the house sale contract, the money transfer slip, the gift confirmation. I didn't read carefully. I was stupid, as the young people say now, but I was stupid because I believed family matters don't need formalities. I was stupid because I thought the law exists to deal with strangers, not to cut down your own brother. I took a deep breath. Then I moved into the duplex, I said. That evening, celebrating, they stood in the middle of the room talking about smart investment plans, about the shared home dream. I was truly happy, for until an old woman knocked on my new door. I turned towards the door. Marjorie was sitting in the back row, gray coat, hands resting on her cane. She looked back at me, nodding slightly. That night, I said, when my wife stepped out to answer the phone, she pressed a bag of money and an old key into my hand. She said, "Take these if you still want a way out. I've heard enough. Tomorrow, you'll be kicked out of your own home." I heard some commotion. I thought she was crazy, I confessed. I thought I was just living in a bad movie where a nosy neighbor was ruining a family's happiness. But then the next morning, when I went to the bank, they told me the duplex is registered in Derek's and Jace's names. Arthur's name is not on the title deed. The money you transferred was recorded as a gift. I turned to the bank representative. "Could you please check for me?" I said. "Is it true that all the documents state this?" He was a little startled. "From a systemic perspective, yes, that's correct," he replied in a professional tone. "I reviewed the files before coming here. Mr. Arthur's name is not on the certificate of ownership. The money transferred to Mr. Derek is recorded as a gift. Everything is legal." "Right. Everything is legal," I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping me. "So, if I just stood here, crying, complaining, everyone would say I'm delusional. Derek would say he's old, confused, thinks people are cheating him. And perhaps one day they'll take me to a place they call better care." I paused, letting that sentence hang in the room. "But luckily for me, my old house had thin walls," I continued, "and there was a neighbor who didn't sleep well." All heads turned towards Marjorie. She slowly stood up. No one invited her, but no one stopped her. "My name is Marjorie Lane," she said, her voice hoarse but clear. "I used to live right next to Arthur's old house. The walls between my house and Derek's were so thin I knew every time he dropped a spoon on the kitchen floor." A few people chuckled faintly, but the smiles vanished as she continued. "I heard him making calls," she said. "Many times. I heard him calling brokers, people who work at nursing homes, discussing cases. He didn't call people by their names. He called them Case 01, Case 02, Case 03. He said, 'That old man is easy. Trust his own son. Just say you're taking out the loan for him.' He laughed when he said, 'Once he's in that place, we'll take care of the house.'" Derek jumped up. "You're making things up," he almost yelled. "No one can confirm those things you eavesdropped on. You're violating privacy." "I don't need your confirmation," she cut him off with unusual calm. "Because I have something else. Not just my ears. I have eyes and hands." She pulled a stack of folded papers from her coat pocket, walking slowly but steadily to the center of the room. She placed the papers on the table, unfolding them. "I asked someone to print these for me," she said. "These are copies of what Arthur and I saw in your office. The black ledger, the list of elderly people, names, addresses, amounts, and notes like moving to nursing home, house transferred. I'm not smart enough to invent every single one of these numbers." I pulled the stack of papers closer, handing one sheet to Uncle Paul, one to the bank representative, one to my wife. These were the pages I had kept in my jacket pocket last night. The photocopies were a bit blurry, but clear enough to read Derek's handwriting. Column A, Arthur Vance. Column D, in progress. Above those lines were other names with statuses like completed, nursing home, deceased. The room suddenly felt cramped. "Mr. Derek," Uncle Paul spoke, his voice calm but with an underlying fire. "How do you explain these lists? Why are there so many elderly people, so many addresses, linked with notes like these? Is this a client ledger or a death register?" "That's my work notes," Derek said, trying to swallow. "I'm a broker. I specialize in helping elderly people transition their assets so they have money for their old age. I use abbreviations for easier recall. Nothing illegal here." "What about the in-progress line next to Arthur's name?" I asked. "What are you progressing with me? What comes after in progress? Nursing home. Completed." "You're jumping to conclusions," Derek retorted. "I only intended to help you manage your finances. You keep thinking everyone wants to harm you, but no one wants to harm the elderly, huh?" Mr. Harris suddenly spoke up. "Then why, for the past few months, every time an old couple in the neighborhood sold their house, people saw Derek bringing clients to view their homes? I saw it from my porch. I'm not blind." "Don't talk about things you don't understand," Jace snapped. "Old people selling their homes is normal. They need money." "Need money or need trust?" Mrs. Harris snorted. "When Mrs. Jenkins moved into the nursing home, she cried to me. She said her nephew convinced her to sell her house, said he'd take care of everything. Oddly enough, that nephew looked quite a bit like you, Jace. Jace's face reddened. We provide a service, he said, his voice rising. People pay us to help them. All old people eventually have to go there. Nothing. He realized what he had just said, but it was too late. Nothing what? Uncle Paul narrowed his eyes. Nothing wrong with treating pushing old people into nursing homes as a service. You just said everyone eventually has to go there, didn't you? I mean, for their health, Jace stammered. Not because... And what about when you told the broker on the phone about collecting old people's houses and splitting commissions? Marjorie asked. Did I misremember? Who are you to keep interfering? Jace yelled. A lonely old woman, sticking her ear to the wall all day, then thinking she's the main character in a movie. Nobody believes you. I do, Evelyn said unexpectedly. The entire room turned to look at my wife. You... Derek looked at her, forcing a smile. You're just confused. I understand. Hearing so many things, anyone would be... I've heard quite a bit, Derek, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. I heard you tell me that you're just holding the papers for him. I heard you tell people that Arthur isn't good with finances. We'll take care of it. I heard you call the lawyer saying he should come early to discuss guardianship, but you never sat down with my husband to truly ask what he wanted. I just wanted to protect him, Derek repeated his mantra. I didn't want him to be tricked into signing wrong papers by strangers. Who are you calling strangers? Evelyn asked. This neighbor? Or me? Because lately, every time I asked you, you said, I'll handle it. I live in this house feeling like I'm just a tenant. The atmosphere in the room shifted completely. People no longer looked at me as an old man with issues. They began to look at Derek and Jace as two actors performing a play whose script the audience had suddenly changed mid-scene. The bank representative cleared his throat. Allow me to say one thing, he spoke up. Legally, it's true that the current records show the duplex registered in Mr. Derek's and Jace's names. Mr. Arthur's money is recorded as a gift. However, if there is evidence of elderly people being manipulated, having their trust exploited to sign documents they don't understand, our bank does not want to be involved in trouble. What do you mean? Derek spun around. You were my advisor. I advised, based on what you presented, he said bluntly. You presented that you were holding the title for your brother, and all decisions were clearly understood by him. Now, I'm hearing a very different story. I don't have the authority to investigate, but until things are clear, I am compelled to recommend a temporary halt to all transactions related to this property. That's internal procedure. Derek's face went white. You can't do that, he blurted out. I've arranged everything. Repayment schedule, restructuring plan. If you want to blame someone, blame this ledger. Uncle Paul held up the photocopy. No one forced you to write in progress next to your brother's name. You wrote it yourself. The atmosphere was no longer a meeting to deal with Arthur. It had transformed into something else. A pre-investigation hearing where everyone began to connect the disparate dots. May I add something? Uncle Paul continued, turning to me. Arthur, do you intend to refer this case to an elder protection agency? Legally, this could very well be a case of elder financial abuse. I don't understand the law, I confessed, but I understand the feeling of being turned into a case on my brother's papers. If the law can name that, I want the law to name it. Good, he nodded. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to keep all the original documents. Don't sign anything else. And absolutely, don't go anywhere alone if they tell you we're taking you to a place with better care. The room let out a dry laugh, but no one found it truly funny. You're listening to our uncle, egging you on to destroy this family, Derek tried to salvage. Arthur, look at me. I'm the only one who helped you get a new home. I pulled money, I handled the paperwork, I took out the loan. Without me, you'd still be in that leaky old house. I'm just asking you to trust me, so I can continue to protect you. You two always use the word protect so well, I said, my voice suddenly tired but clear. Protect me from paperwork, by hiding the paperwork. Protect me from strangers, by locking me up, labeling me unstable. Protect me from poverty, by taking all my money, then letting me crash on the lower floor. I looked straight into his eyes. "Derek," I said slowly, each word landing like a hammer blow. "If back then, when you fell off your bike, I said, 'Let me protect you,' then I stole your new bike and made you walk, would you feel protected?" He fell silent, not because he couldn't find a clever answer, but because he knew, here, any additional word he uttered could become another shovel digging deeper the hole he was standing in. Jace looked around, seeing the tide turn, and irritably blurted out, "The truth is, all old people eventually have to go into nursing homes," he snapped. "We're just doing it a little sooner to spare them the trouble. Without us, they wouldn't even be able to manage the house." That statement was like the final drop of oil poured onto a fire. "You two call forcing old people into nursing homes doing it a little sooner?" Mrs. Harris almost jumped up. "Tomorrow I'm going to talk to all the ladies in the fitness club, see if they want to do it a little sooner with you." "I will record this meeting," Uncle Paul said, pulling out his phone. "Not to post online, but so that if the authorities ask later, I can accurately recount your attitudes when talking about the elderly." The bank representative closed his brief. "I think I've heard enough," he said, standing up. "As I said, the bank will temporarily halt all processing of documents related to this house until a clear conclusion is reached. I advise everyone to seek their own legal counsel, especially Mr. Arthur." "You can't side with him," Derek almost screamed. "I'm not siding with anyone," he replied, his eyes cold. "I'm siding with my workplace. We don't want our name associated with an elder abuse complaint. Good day, everyone." The door closed behind him. His footsteps faded down the hallway. In the room, the atmosphere changed completely. At first, everyone came here thinking they'd witness an old man's problem being smoothly resolved. Now they saw a different scene. An old man, hands trembling but standing tall, holding crumpled papers, confronting an entire elaborately planned financial game. And that game was starting to crack. "Brother." Derek turned towards me, his voice having lost all composure. "You're destroying this family, do you know that?" "I'm not destroying anything," I replied. "I'm just pulling back the curtain. The room behind that curtain was built by you two. If it's ugly, that's not the fault of the one who pulls the curtain." Evelyn touched my hand, squeezing it gently. I'm sorry," she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. "I didn't believe you sooner." "I don't need your apology right now," I replied, still looking at Derek and Jace. "I need you to open your eyes. The rest we'll figure out later." Derek looked around, searching for something, an ally, a sympathetic gaze. He didn't find much. Even the aunt who used to praise him for being capable was now looking down at the photocopy, her lips pressed together. Cousin Mark, who used to drink beer with him, now avoided eye contact. Mr. and Mrs. Harris had clearly taken a side. Uncle Paul, well, that went without saying. For the first time, Derek seemed to shrink in the very room he had arranged. "Fine," he said, his voice dropping, a little hoarse. "You want it this way, huh? You want to drag everything out into the open? Fine. From now on, don't ask me to handle any more paperwork. I'll take care of myself and my son only. You want to sue? Sue. You want to call the police? Call them. I'm done with responsibility." He uttered the word responsibility, like throwing a stone onto the floor. "You never had responsibility," Marjorie replied, her eyes never leaving him. "You only had self-interest. Today, that self-interest was exposed. That's all." Jace kicked his chair violently, hurrying towards the door. "I don't need to stay and listen to any of this," he mumbled. "Everyone here is against me." "No," I said. "Everyone here hears both sides. It's just you two who refuse to listen." The door slammed shut behind him. Derek stood for a few more seconds, as if debating whether to shout or remain silent. Finally, he chose silence. He walked out, not looking back at anyone. Remaining in the room were those who had no direct financial interest in this house. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Uncle Paul broke the silence. "Arthur," he said, his voice now softened, "from now on, don't sign any more documents with Derek or Jace. If they give you anything, give it to me to see first. I'll help you contact elder protection organizations. This kind of thing isn't just our family's problem. I've seen it before. But this time, I don't want to be an outsider. I I swallowed, my throat feeling dry. Thank you, Uncle. Me too, Mr. Harris said. If you need someone to testify that Derek and Jace brought how many old people to view houses, sell houses, I'll sign. I'm not blind. I'm not savvy with the law, Mrs. Harris added, but I know faces, the faces of decent people and the faces of people who see old folks as opportunities. If you need someone to stand before the other ladies and say, don't let them lead you by the nose, I can do that. I looked around the room. The table was still the old table. The chairs were still the old chairs, but everyone's position had changed. If, at first, I was the one sitting alone at the edge of the table, with Derek standing right in the middle, now I realized I wasn't completely alone anymore. There were other elderly people. There was a neighbor lady. There was a gray-bearded uncle. There were a few gossipy neighbors, but this time, they were gossiping about the right things. The meeting did not end with me signing guardianship papers. It ended with everyone agreeing that until everything was clear, no transactions related to this house would proceed. No one had the right to lock me away anywhere in the name of better care. And this story would no longer be told in closed rooms where Derek stood in the center, controlling the narrative. As everyone left one by one, Marjorie stayed behind. I told you so, she shrugged. When the truth comes to light, those who like to talk behind backs will be blinded. I haven't won yet, I said. It's just, they just lost their turn. Sweet revenge isn't about winning or losing a meeting, she replied. It's about you taking back something. People thought you'd lost. Do you know what you just took back? I do, I smiled faintly. Not the title deed, not the money. What is it? The right to tell my own story, I said. Not through my brother's mouth, not through my nephew's words, not through papers written by others, only through me. She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. Well then, you're richer than many young people already, Arthur, she said. Richer than even your smart younger brother. When the door closed behind her, the living room fell silent again. But it was no longer the room where Derek sat at the head of the table, holding a ledger, preaching about financial futures. It had just become a different kind of stage, where an old man once deemed confused stood in the center, exposing an entire scheme of deceit within the family before the very people who had wrongly believed. And though everything out there, the bank, the authorities, the law, still had a long way to go, I knew one thing. From that day on, the story no longer belonged to Derek. It had slipped from his grasp, like a wrench from a mechanic's hand, falling to the floor, creating a clang that the entire neighborhood heard. I still remember the morning after that meeting, the morning I stepped out onto the porch, took a deep breath, and realized I finally didn't have to bow my head anymore. Things weren't completely over yet, but the noose that had been tightening around my neck for months, it had loosened. Derek and Jace were no longer standing there, looking down on me. They were busy answering question after question from people who had once trusted them. I vaguely heard whispers about them being investigated for other transactions. It's understandable, really. If you do something dirty once, what's there to be shy about the next few times? But when the truth was laid bare for so many, when the whole neighborhood whispered their names, no mask could hold up anymore. As for Evelyn and me, we started over. It was difficult, yes, and tiring, but at least this time, it was our own journey. The bank contacted us, saying they would review my residency rights in the duplex based on elder protection mechanisms. My uncle's lawyer also came, showing me how to file for financial abuse verification. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was no longer cornered. We cleaned out Derek's old office, that room reeking of paperwork and schemes. I gathered every file he'd left behind, carefully putting them into a bag for the investigator. Evelyn held a paint roller, sweeping it across the old wall, each stroke of paint like erasing a heavy layer I hadn't been able to name before. The windows were wide open. Light streamed in. Never had that room been so bright. That afternoon, Marjorie brought over a small potted plant. Its leaves were pale yellow, its stem thin but resilient. She placed it right by the door, smiling gently at me. The house is clean now. Now for your heart, Arthur. I said nothing, just nodded. It was strange. All those years living next to each other, I never thought an old neighbor lady would be the one to pull me out of the hole my own family had dug. That evening, I stood on the porch, looking out at the road in front of the house. Just a few months ago, I proudly called this place my final dream. Then I fearfully called it a trap. But now, I think I can call it home again. Not perfect, not serene, but my home, and a place where I truly have the right to stand. I know some people are curious. What hurt me the most in all of this? The money? The house? No. Those things I worked for my whole life. If I lose them, I can rebuild. The most painful thing was realizing I had trusted the wrong people. Trusted those I loved with my own flesh and blood. Believed they would love me back simply because I was their older brother, their uncle, the one who used to carry them when they were little. But life doesn't work that way. So, let me ask you a question. A question I wish I had asked myself sooner. If one day an old neighbor woman comes to your door, her hand trembling as she presses a key into your hand and says, "Don't trust your family," who will you believe? Her or someone who shares your blood? And at my age, what's scarier, being poor in money or poor in people you can trust? I'm sharing this story not for anyone to feel sorry for me. No need, I'm still standing firm. I'm telling it because I want people like me, elderly individuals, those who rely on trust more than paperwork, to be a little more vigilant. Don't sign anything you don't understand. Don't entrust your life's assets to others just because they share your last name. And don't underestimate that feeling of unease. That gut feeling many times is what saves your life. I also want to say this. Sometimes the person who saves you isn't a family member. Sometimes it's someone you thought you only knew well enough to wave to over the fence each morning, like my Marjorie, a thin, slow-moving woman, but her heart was stronger than all the strapping young men in my house combined. Now then, let me ask one last question, just for you, the person listening to this story. Where are you watching this video? In your living room, on a break, or in the middle of the night when the house is quiet? And have you ever witnessed an elderly person's trust being exploited? Someone turned into a burden just because they weren't good with paperwork, didn't know how to say no? If you've seen it or experienced it yourself, please share in the comments section below. Who knows, your story might help someone wake up before it's too late. If you find my story worth sharing with someone else, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Here, we tell stories about family, about trust, about assets, and about how sometimes life throws you to the bottom just to teach you how to stand up straight again. Thank you for joining me until the very end. I wish you peace, and may you always have someone to trust, and know when to stop trusting. This is my sweet revenge.